If you're going to go and start a business, a traditional business would simply tell you that go out, write a business plan, and then in your next step it will tell you go and set up your business entity, and then go and learn and understand how home business taxes works, but also you should go and register your business name. You go and get your tax identification number, and then look into what business insurers and all the other bits and pieces would come into play into that. So when you add all these bits and pieces together, you notice that they end up adding up into tens of thousands of dollars or pounds before you even get started doing anything. And that alone kind of dampens up on the idea that starting a home-based business is a good idea for you to go and do it. You always look at it and say, oh my goodness, I'm gonna have to take 10,000-15,000 pounds out of my business, out of my personal savings account and start a business, and I don't have that kind of money. So you push it forward. All right. The way how we look at starting a business in the business modeling concepts that we share and teach and promote as small scale business ideas, we look at it differently. So we've come up with a concept that can actually help you start a business on what we call a bootstrapped budget. So if you have £100, we can help you put together a business concept that can actually set you on the right track to start your business with just as little as £100. If you have 400, if you have 600, or if you have $1,000, it's the same thing. The only difference here is that when you start with let's say £100, it means most of the work you're gonna have to do it yourself. That's the difference. If you have £1,000, it means you can actually ask other people to help you put all those bits and pieces that you need to put together. So that's the difference here. So if you are kind of thinking about how do I start a small business from home and I don't have a lot of money, I think this business model that we are sharing here, where you can start with as little as £100, is the best business option I think you can start, and it's something that I think is scalable, but is also open to getting the seed planted now and watering it over the 18-24 months that we're talking about. So the way how this business concept looks like is that at a first stage, we look at deciding at what niche that you want to go and do. So at this particular stage, what we look at is doing niche research and then picking a niche. A niche market is kind of like a laser focused small portion of a bigger market that's out there. So when you're bootstrapping and you're starting small, you don't want to target a bigger pie of a business. What we normally do is we scale it down and focus. If it's targeting 200 people, we would do that. This is just an example. I'm not saying that you could start a business only targeting a 200 online from home. And if you've been looking around trying to find the information that I think can help you put in the right path when starting a small business from home, then I think you are in the right place tonight. This recording tonight, I think it's going to help you show you the options that you have when you're looking into starting a business from home. So if you have been searching online, trying to find the best resource that would show you how starting a business online works, then I think this guide is going to benefit you quite a lot. So generally, starting a blog is always considered to be risky. Just like any other business, there are risks associated to that. And when you are sort of like getting started, there's this feeling of anxiety associated with it, and I understand that because having been there for a couple of times when I have attempted to start my own business online, I know how it feels when you are getting started, especially when you are short of information, because when you look at the resources that we find online, especially when you're looking around like on YouTube and going through some blog posts, you notice that not every resource is sort of like complete. Many blogs that actually offer startup guides and things like that, they are kind of like doing it in kind of like in half quantities. So they provide a bit of information on how to get started, and then when you sort of like getting into the nitty-gritty of understanding exactly the processes and what you need to do, they'll ask you to make a payment or to pay for something for you to get a full access to the resources. And I think that's kind of like makes the whole process of getting started a little bit more difficult. So what we want to do here is sort of like strip down our own businesses and show you exactly how the whole thing works when you take all the other cosmetics on top of the business. I also have to point out that it's not for faint-hearted. So if you are somebody who is looking for anything that can kind of like act as a quick fix, possibly this is not for you. This business guides that I think we put up here and we post here at least twice every week, they kind of like move in series. So if you are new on this channel and especially on this program, below this video there should be some links that actually can take you to a resource where you can download the free resources that we have provided, and there are also links to our previous videos that I think we have been posting since we got started from here. So we've got ongoing business case studies where we share information on how we are starting a blog from scratch, and then moving on to bringing that blog to profit. It's a process, I think, that's kind of like have a long-term goal, not necessarily something that you can just jump on and make money quickly and then you jump off when you need. But if you are determined to sort of like start a small business online, working from home, the long goal in mind that probably maybe in the next 12 or 18 months you should be able to make between 10, 15 and 25,000 pounds every month, then I think this is going to suit you. But if you see you who is kind of like looking for get rich quick schemes and stuff like that, probably maybe this video is not going to be very helpful to you. You might as well just click off and look for a lot of these other resources that I think they speak about that. What we care most about here is the sort of like business longevity and building sustainable evergreen businesses. So our resources are focused in such a way that what we want to do is build real sustainable businesses, but in a way that I think you can easily spend less as compared to spending more. In these guides, you will notice that most of our businesses are built on a bootstrap business strategy. So we model our businesses around other businesses that are already working and things like that. So that's what we are trying to do here. On the other hand, I think this guide is also going to be helpful for anyone who is looking into starting a home-based business, or if you are looking into starting a blog, but with a business focus in mind. Like I've pointed out earlier, starting a business is always risky. And when you are doing anything that I think involves risk, there is always an element of fear. You always fear, whether you're going to make it, or maybe whether your skill sets are good enough to be able to go on the market and cut it. Fear is an element that I think we both share, whether you are successful or not successful, whether you are an entrepreneur who has started a business which has already started providing the results and the profitability that you are enjoying at the moment. If you sit down and ask them, they will tell you that there's an element of fear. So what we want is to kind of like help you understand how the successful entrepreneurs get started in doing what they do, even when there's that element of fear present in the back of their heads. What sets people apart from others who are failing to act is not necessarily that there is an absence of fear in itself. Their success is sort of like built in the concept that they always remain functional, even when they are faced with fear. I think this is the way how human resilience sort of like is built to adapt the mindset to be able to moderate the fear of failure, or maybe sort of like a fear of rejection, which I think in my previous recordings I've sort of like extrapolated this information and given you a bit of insight into what it means to have fear of failure, or maybe a feeling of rejection. What matters most when fear creeps in your decision-making process, especially now that you're considering about starting a business online, working from home, is your level of tolerance for fear of rejection. Now, many folks who come to me, seeking for information on the prospects of starting a business from home, or maybe it could be they're starting a blog, they often come with what I would call a perfectionist mentality. I say perfectionism simply because the majority of in this case, like let's say somebody who is starting a new blog, and they are starting that blog with a business perspective in mind. They want to make that blog start making money for them. They have this inferiority overview of the ability and the quality of their work. The idea that they are good enough to be able to to be able to believe that they are going to be able to sort of like take steps and make their business work, or make their blog work. It's just not there, you see, and that in itself is a problem, because if you have this feeling of inferiority complex built in within you, you look at the work that you're doing and you feel like it's not good enough to be able to cut on the market. Obviously, chances are that you won't be able to go out there and speak with people so that they can come and enjoy or maybe learn one or two things out of the pieces of content that you are producing. So it's not necessarily that I think it's something that's unique to one person. It's something that I think we all have to overcome. When I'm speaking to a lot of people that work with me, people who have hired me to work with them, I always tell them that, look, you only have to look at a perspective like of a dentist or a doctor or even a lawyer. These guys are people who go and they stand in courts, they stand in hospitals, open other people's hearts, operate and put them back. Usually when you look at that process where you are cutting down somebody's, somebody's heart, and you are doing that operation and then putting it back, it's not something that I think you're born with. It's something that you learn to acquire these skills and put them together. And the only way you can get better at doing that is not necessarily by getting better before you get started, but by actually getting better as you're practicing your trade, as you're providing the value on the market. So usually when people come to me and they say, I want to start a small business from home, but I just don't think my previous experiences, like I've worked in the government for 10, 15, 20 years, or maybe I've been in the private sector for 25 years, I still don't feel like I've got anything to offer out there. I often laugh about this, and I always say, anybody, even a student at a college, can provide provide value. I'll give you an example. Like in my business, I use templates quite a lot. Whether it's writing articles, I've got a template for writing different pieces of content. Whether it's planning my content strategy, I also have a template that is in place. So if I'm starting a blog about about a certain product, or maybe an authority blog, but the monetization that I'm going to put on it is based around Amazon affiliate, or maybe AdSense and stuff like that. These always work with templates, and most of these templates, they're built on top of simple systems like PowerPoint, Excel, and all sorts of things. These are things that I think they're developed and designed by somebody in a dormitory in a college. So them people, when they go online and say, I want to start a business, obviously the business they're going to start is going to be providing these services and stuff like that. And then they start making money. And if you look at that particular example, you notice that even though the skill sets are so limited when you are just in college, but it doesn't necessarily, it's going to limit the way, how much money you can actually make when you go and start a small business online. And when you look at somebody who has been in the private sector for 10, 15, 20 years, they have enormous experience to share. They just don't know. A lot of people just don't know how to package and repackage some of the knowledge and expertise that they have. And that's what I actually come in and sort of like help them break down the skill sets, repackage them, but at the same time also help them put the mindset in the right frame so that they're able to sort of like just focus on the one thing that they know that they can deliver more value to their customers, and they help them bring that to the market. So you will notice that naturally the brain is kind of like a pattern seeking machine. So if you kind of like, okay, let me give you an example. In my line of work, the mindset is everything, all right? So if you do not kind of like take time to set the mindset controls correctly, you are always going to be chasing, dreams while others are living the lifestyle that you envy. And that being said, like I pointed out earlier, that the brain is a pattern-seeking machine. If those controls that I'm talking about are not properly set, when you let them, sort of like run wild, they would definitely default to perfectionism. You touch this, you say, oh, maybe this is not perfect. You touch that, maybe you say, oh, no, this is not perfect. Now, I also need to quickly point out to you guys, because there's, I think, a misconception when people talk about perfectionism. When somebody says, I'm a perfectionist, we always assume that being a perfectionist is somebody who does their job meticulously and they kind of like do things in a perfect way, and the only way how this thing is going to come out is only when it's immaculately designed or maybe polished, like spotless. But that's not the way how it works. The way how I look at being a perfectionist or perfectionism is I think more or less like a procrastination. You always tell yourself that I can't do this today, or maybe I'm not going to do this today. I'll have to do this I'll have to let this go out tomorrow simply because I feel like it's not ready. And that's just you and your mindset kind of like telling you to play it safe, simply because at the back of your head you have this fear that if you publish that article, let's say if you're writing a blog post, and you write you're writing that article, and you sort of like fear that if you publish that article and people go through that article, they're going to see through some of the shortcomings, some of the shortfalls within that article, that the imperfections that you're going to display in that article. That kind of like stops you from doing that. And when you have that mindset, it stops you from doing things like on the limb, simply because you feel like it only has to go out when people look at it, they'll be like, wow, yeah, he did this. But that's not the way how it works. That's just your mindset telling you to procrastinate. So you keep pushing the goals. And when your mind sort of like defaults to that kind of thinking, right? Everything you see in your life becomes a moving target. You're always telling yourself, look, I'm not going to be able to go out and sort of like ask her out simply because I feel chubby. Maybe I need to go into the gym and work out and build muscles and look perfect for her. And then she's going to say yes. But that's just you and your mindset bullshitting you. When you think about launching a blog, you always tell yourself, oh, maybe I don't have time at the moment. Maybe when when the time is right, I'm going to launch this blog. That's just your mindset keeping hold of you, keeping you behind, right? So like I said, being a perfectionist, it's all about, you having failed in the first place to put those, controls in the right manner, so that when your mind, like I said, is a pattern-seeking machine. When it starts seeking for patterns within itself, it doesn't go and default to this perfectionism. To understand why I think this is problematic, you only have to understand that you only have to look at what being perfect is all about. It's about you giving excuses and hoping that when the sun shines tomorrow, then I'm gonna go out there and make hay. But that's not the way how it works. Anybody who wants to make hay wakes up in the morning, early in the morning, before even the birds start singing. You go into the field and you start harvesting your hay and baling them for a sunny day or for a rainy day. That's the way how we work. So it takes kind of like a bit of help from people to help you understand these things, and then sort of like put your mindset at ease, so that even when you are scared of being judged by people who are not so kind, they don't have kind words at the kind of work that you're putting out. You sort of like prepare yourself that even when they say your job is not good enough, the quality of work is under par, or whatever they say, you say that's perfectly fine. I'm on the right track, and I'm gonna keep doing this until I get better. That's the kind of mindset we sort of like promote here. Now, what I want to do now is sort of like give you an overview of how starting a home based business looks like. All right. And then after that, I'm also going to show you how a modern home-based business looks like when it's properly set by the system that we promote and share here. All right. So if you're going to go and start a business, a traditional business would simply tell you that go out, write a business plan. And then in your next step, it will tell you, go and set up your business entity, and then go and learn and understand how home business taxes works. But also you should go and register your business name. You go and get your tax identification number, and then look into what business insurers and all the other bits and pieces would come into play into that. So when you add all these bits and pieces together, you notice that they end up adding up into tens of thousands of dollars or pounds before you even get started doing anything. And that alone kind of like dampens up on the idea that starting a home-based business is a good idea for you to go and do it. You always look at it and say, oh my goodness, I'm gonna have to take 10,000-15,000 pounds out of my business, out of my personal savings account and start a business, and I don't have that kind of money. So you push it forward. All right. The way how we look at starting a business in the business modeling concepts that we share and teach and promote as small scale business ideas, we look at it differently. So we've come up with a concept that can actually help you kind of like start a business on what we call a bootstrapped budget. So if you have £100, we can help you put together a business concept that can actually set you on the right track to start your business with just as little as £100. If you have 400, if you have 600, or if you have $1,000, it's the same thing. The only difference here is that when you start with let's say £100, it means most of the work you're gonna have to do it yourself. That's the difference. If you have £1,000, it means you can actually ask other people to help you put all those bits and pieces that you need to put together. So that's the difference here. So if you are kind of like thinking about how do I start a small business from home and I don't have a lot of money, I think this business model that we are sharing here, where you can start with as little as £100, is the best business option I think you can start. And it's something that I think is scalable, but is also open to sort of like getting the seed planted now and watering it over the 18-24 months that we're talking about. So the way how this business concept looks like is that at a first stage, we look at deciding at what niche that you want to go and do. So at this particular stage, what we look at is doing niche research and then picking a niche. a niche market is kind of like a laser focused small portion of a bigger market that's out there. So when you're bootstrapping and you're starting small, you don't want to target a bigger pie of a business. What we normally do is we scale it down and focus. If it's targeting 200 people, we would do that. This is just an example. I'm not saying that you could start a business only targeting at 200 people, but I'm just giving you an example of how niche focused we are. So we only focus at the one thing that I think you can bring and take, take customers to market to much quicker. And secondly, we also look at what sort of platforms are we going to build our distribution network on? Because when we talk about starting a blog, people look at a blog as the business itself. It's a distribution system. When you look at Facebook, you look at YouTube, you look at Pinterest. These are networks. So when you set up a WordPress website, or you set up a Wix website, that becomes part of a distribution network that you've put together to connect the dots so that your business can operate on top of that. All right. So we look into that, and then after we've looked into that, we go out and look for the best hosting services providers who can host the distribution network that we've put in place. All right. Then after that, we go and look into deciding which domain name should we go and register, and we move on to stage number 5, where we kind of like look at how to get started with WordPress. And in this case, let's say if you've never used WordPress before, if you've never installed WordPress on your website and things like that, how do you move from installing WordPress to configuring it and the designing, the cosmetic look of the website so that it's palatable to the way how you want it to look and the way how you want your customers to perceive you. And then all these bits and pieces, we have guides, instructional videos, and the printable cheat sheets and all these bits and pieces that you can actually download. The links should be below this video. And we go in there and help you look into how designing and using your blog is going to look like. Once we've done that, we move on to stage number 7, which is looking at autoresponders. That kind of like ties together the whole network, distributional network, that kind of like allows you to automate a lot of bits and pieces that are kind of like requiring you to manually doing this. Let's say maybe if you are planning on launching a small course where you are dripping content to your readers and stuff like that, or your followers on your blog, then we put together that autoresponder and create the pieces of content and put them into that autoresponder so that it can automatically drip that. So you don't have to manually wake up every morning and send a copy of email to your readers and things like that. So that's what we normally do and help you put together when you are starting a small business online and you're doing this from home. That's the process really. And if you guys kind of like have any questions that you want to ask and you want to understand all the inner works and all the other bits and pieces, and make sure to subscribe to this channel, because we are constantly publishing content every now and then. At least I think we publish content at least twice a week. And when you are a subscriber, it means you get notified when a new piece of content has been published. But at the same time, we are also constantly providing free resources and coupons to things like web hosting. We also have other bits and pieces I think that we promote, so you can take advantage of that. And if you are on our email list, then it means these resources are dropped straight into your account. All right. Like I've said, guys, if you have any question about starting a small business online and working from home, then make sure to go below this video and leave a comment. And thanks for watching how to start a small business online. All right. Cheers, guys.